Right, with Zeus Education, let's get right into it tonight. So tonight, I made this video called the UC Application Masterclass. We're obviously going to be talking about the UC system and everything, kind of all the subtopics within it. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. Yeah, so how to build a competitive UC application. I've got a lot of requests for this video, and I'm looking forward to bringing this to you guys. So this first slide, I want to talk about why UC admissions are just different. So starting, the UC system, they receive so many applicants. They've been popular. They're some of the world's best institutions, but they receive hundreds of thousands of applications annually. We'll talk about the individual schools later, but it's important to keep in mind just the pure number of volume these schools get. I want to talk about that in this slide. And the next point I want to make sure we cover is currently they're test blind. So the test scores you're going to submit, SAT, ACT, they're actually not considered. Now, after you apply, you can actually submit them later on for purposes of auditing different classes, but you cannot submit it inside the UC application. Also, lastly on this slide, what makes UC admissions different? Compared to some other institutions, primarily on the East Coast and the UC system, you're evaluated within the context of the opportunities at your school. So you're not going to be disincentivized or kind of looked at negatively because you couldn't take a certain level of a science class or a math class that isn't offered at your public school that's maybe offered at a Phillips Exeter or an Andover. So you are compared to a student who comes from a similar context of the opportunities, classes, and things at your particular school. So I just wanted to cover that point before we go further into this video. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I assume most of you guys do, but the UC campuses, you apply under one common app, but there's still 9 separate campuses. I cover these more later on as we go, but they typically go Berkeley is number 1, then goes to UCLA. Normally Santa Barbara, San Diego, Irvine are kind of that middle tier. Then you get into the bottom tier, which is Davis, Riverside, Merced, Santa Cruz. Merced's the newest UC option. We'll get into rankings and stuff and popular majors as the video goes along, but these are the 9 institutions inside the UC campus that make up the wider UC system. So I talked about it a little bit on the previous slide, but are different grades within the UC system. I always laugh when you see someone saying they graduate from the University of California. Because normally that's Berkeley, but I have seen people saying they went to the University of California when it's Merced. So kind of some weird developments as the UC system continues to grow. All right, so the UC Berkeley, number 1, they're the best public university in the world. And then after Berkeley, you have UCLA, which is typically the number 2 public university in the world. I wanted to make a quick note that with UCLA, it's in Westwood. They receive the most amount of applications every year of any school in the world. It's not surprising with the location. Also, a few comments about majors. Yeah, takeaway for this slide, UC Berkeley and UCLA are the 2 premier flagship institutions within the UC system, with UC Berkeley being number 1 and UCLA being number 2. Then for those of you who don't know, Berkeley is obviously in Northern California, about 30 minutes from San Francisco. Okay, let's keep moving on. I promise I won't take too long with this video, but I want to highlight a lot of important overarching topics within the UC system. Okay, so the second tier of UC schools, they're still normally top 30 national universities, so they're still highly competitive and really hard to get into, but at the same time, they're not Berkeley, they're not UCLA. So normally these go Irvine. For those of you who don't know, Irvine's right near Newport Beach, Southern California. Then you go to UC San Diego, which is in La Jolla, and you also have UC Santa Barbara, which is near Montecito. Now, like I said, these are ranked behind UCLA and Berkeley, but they're that middle tier for UC schools. So the best way to look at the UC system is normally the premier, the middle, and the lower tier. And like I said, this is the middle tier within the UC system. And now for the next slide, we're going to cover the bottom tier. And Let's move on to the slide. But despite these being like the bottom tier of UC schools, there's still so much more competitive and better institutions than a lot of schools around the country. The reality is the UC system's just so good that there's just so much variety, and all these schools are good within the UC system. It's just there are tiers. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this third tier. You get into Davis, Riverside, Santa Cruz, excuse me, and UC Merced. So UC San Diego, that's up north. UC Riverside's in Riverside, and then you have UC Santa Cruz and Merced, which one is up north and one's kind of Central California. Um, these all have good majors we can talk about inside these schools, and particularly more competitive areas of study. But I think when going into the UC system, it's important to know the nine institutions and kind of what's considered elite, what's good, and what's a little tier below it. But yeah, let's move on to the next part of this video. So now that we know the schools, we know how many people apply, we should talk about how the UC admissions, how the system works. So they normally admissions committees inside the UC system, they look at a variety of factors. I listed a few here that I find every year working with students are really important. So they'll look at things like special talents, extracurriculars, leadership, if you were in charge of a club, other roles, the classes you took in high school, did you take APs, etc., and academic achievement, unweighted GPA, weighted GPA. I didn't list these here, but also inside the holistic review process, they'll look at letters of rec, resumes. Um, there's a lot these schools look at outside of the traditional SAT and GPA process. Excuse me, not GPA, the SAT and ACT process. Um, yeah, okay, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so inside the UC application, it's really important to talk about how the UC application differs from the common application. And just to point out, the UC system, it's not the common app, it's a totally different application. So when you apply at the UC system, you use a single UC application. And through this, you apply to multiple campuses at once. Now, inside this UC application, it's totally different, like I said, compared to the common app. But you do the UC app and you get a chance to click on each school separately. So for example, let's say you could apply to Berkeley, UCSB, Irvine, and then UC Merced. But this is a completely different process than the common application. But also inside this, it's easy to apply to a lot of the or all or whatever schools you choose at the UC. Like at the UC application, it makes it easy once you fill it out to pick which specific schools you want to apply to. However, the UC application is a lot of work, but once you finish it, it's pretty much your pick and choose which of the nine institutions you want to submit apps to. I see some people saying it's just like you do it once. Like, sure, it's the UC app, but it is a subset with which schools you're going to apply to. And each school does have its own application fee. Okay, now that we know about the Common App versus the UC app, I think it's a good point to keep moving on. So I talked about this a little earlier, but a few things to point out here real quick. Standardized test scores are not considered still. And then inside this UC application, there's 4 personal insight questions. I work with a lot of students on these. It's really important to have these done right, specifically for the UC system. And I mentioned this earlier, but that one application can be submitted to multiple UC campuses. Yeah, I think that's everything I want to cover here. I know I talked about this on the other slides. One more time, standardized test scores are not considered. I said they're test blind. You could submit it after you apply, but they won't look at it and determine it like an admission criteria or result. You just submit the standardized test if you want to like not take certain classes, such as a certain English or math class, because you meet a certain criteria there. You get to skip over a level or something, essentially. Let's move on to the next slide. So I talked about this earlier inside the UC application, but there's personal insight questions. So right now the UC application is using 8 of these, and then the student gets to pick 4 of the 8, and each response is fairly short. They're all under Yeah, they're all under 350 words. You get to highlight different parts of yourself that make you an applicant, such as academic interest, meaningful experiences. I work with a lot of students, kind of going through their specific background to determine which of these questions we should respond to and why. Because the way you answer these questions without having to do an SAT or an ACT can really change your whole admissions profile and what schools you get accepted to. Um, I just mentioned two of the things I typically tell students when focusing on these, but each student truly is different, and the fact that you only get a response of 4 to 8 with 350 words makes that every word does count. Just the importance of if you want to go to a UC school, the importance of filling these out properly cannot be overlooked. Um, it's not something to just rush through because despite being short, the UC system puts a lot of weight on these questions, probably which is why, in my opinion, they made this structure. Picking 4 to 8 to respond to is a choice, and keeping it narrow, um, it really gives you a great opportunity to highlight yourself, but you have to do it in the right way because it is so, you are making a choice because by selecting 4, you're ignoring 4 of the questions also. And the UC system is paying close attention to which questions you're focusing on, which ones you're putting off to the side, and then how you're using the 350 words. For example, I get a lot of questions, should you write 100 words, 200 words? Can you go over? And there's a lot that goes into this despite only being 350 words and like under 1,400 words total for all the PIQs. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. For this slide, I just want to quickly mention that, while going into senior year, with these schools not looking at SAT or ACT, a strong upward trend can really help move the needle if you're kind of borderline acceptance numbers. But then if you start earning bad grades, like, late junior year, early senior year, that raises large concerns because without these standardized tests being looked at, the GPA gets looked at a lot more than some of the other factors in the application. And you have to look at the grades earned, trends, performance in core subjects. My whole point is these are going to be highlighted more because other things, like I said, like the standardized testing, are not going to be a component of your application with what the UC system is doing now. I want to talk about some of the classes you have to take in high school to even be eligible. Believe it or not, I've seen students want to apply, but thank God we started working together early enough where I could tell them to take these classes because their counselors at their high school didn't tell them they need to take these classes to even be eligible to, apply to a UC school. History, social science, English, mathematics, lab science, normally Spanish, French, Latin, visual performing arts, and then there's other electives you can take too. I won't get into APs and all that stuff here. This is just like, picture 1 through 10. You have to be at least at 1 to apply. And by taking these classes, you're at the 1. Obviously, the more APs and stuff is normally better, but you have to take these classes to be considered for admission. Like I said, it's expected. Students I work with who get into the Berkeleys, the UCLAs at high odds, um, they're doing a lot more than the average applicant. Honors courses, AP. I mentioned this early on the start of this video, that the admission officers evaluate students based on opportunities available at their school. I say this in the context if your school doesn't offer some of the super high level science courses, but you're still exceeding at a high level at the science classes your school does offer, you're not going to be viewed negatively because of that. I get this question a lot from students, seeing that, I mentioned it before, but some of these elite prep schools on the East Coast have science levels that go so far beyond some of the public schools. But the thing is, just excel, exceed at the classes your school does offer, and you're going to be putting yourself in a good position to gain acceptance into some of these UC schools. Just because a school offers harder classes does not mean that they expect, you to be taking and excelling at these classes. Take the AP courses if your school offers them, get the best grades you can, but just because there's these like extremely high level science classes, you don't have to be taking them just because someone else is. It doesn't necessarily help in the way people think. Yeah, so understanding the UC GPA. So UC is kind of like a lot of other stuff you guys are seeing with the PIQs and the UC app in itself. They calculate GPA differently as well. My whole point with this slide is not everything's equal. they'll look at dual enrollment, AP. I want to highlight approved honors courses because there's honors courses that UC won't highlight when calculating your GPA. So always just keep in mind that UCs calculate GPA differently and that there's tools online you could use to find your GPA in the UC system. And I say this because you don't want to be surprised when you apply, like, oh, I thought my GPA was a 4.3 and it's like a 3.9, because that could change the school list of where you're going to apply. It's important to know what honors classes are approved, so when you do apply, you're not surprised. So if you think you have a 4.3, you actually do in fact have a 4.3. All the way GPAs are not calculated equally is an important point to take from the slide, guys. I made this application timeline. I don't think we need to cover it. I'll leave this here if you guys want to go back for it. I just want to talk quickly about the importance of conducting a final review. I know I talk about the UC deadline here, but hopefully you're getting this done so far before the deadline. So I talk about this a lot, but submitting on the first day or like in the first few weeks apps are open can really give a student different opportunities and options than if you're applying last second at the time apps are due. Okay, I promise this will be short, so I want to keep moving through this. Which takes us to the final thoughts. So the strongest UC applicants in terms of the application, they are at the top of their high school classes, especially for the students wanting to go to Berkeley, you know, the number one public university and the number one public university in the world, and UCLA. And these students who are the strongest UC applicants gain to these top tier institutions within the system. They do excel academically. They're taking the hardest classes offered, like I said, at their school. Don't compare yourself to other schools. And then inside their school, in addition to excelling academically, you know, typically taking classes, excelling academically, like 4.0s typically is very common. They're challenging themselves, taking all the AP schools your classes offer. And then those are the, you know, the big two academic components. But then in addition to taking hard classes is excelling, they're also normally a part of student clubs, organizations, things like passion projects. They're helping others. They're in their communities. It's this meaningful impact that actually plays a large part in your application. And I really like helping students, you know, highlight this part of themselves the right way and put this whole package together. So I've worked with students that are like, okay, my grades are good. I've taken hard classes, but what's the impact I've shown? And we normally do these deep dives with students to see that maybe they don't see it at the time, but they have created a lot of impact normally in their communities. And it's really important not to overlook things you have done. And then through this, it's just telling compelling stories. It's highlighting your best self to the specific reader at each particular school. And normally this takes, you know, changing the application. Like the UC application is its own thing. You have to know how to write the UC application properly for the right audience, because the UC application is not the same as applying to like a Cal State school. It's not the same as applying to University of Virginia. These readers do expect it in a certain kind of style, and knowing the style really helps students get the results you need. And then finally, I want to finish on a few notes that success is not perfection. You want to just be able to work hard and have the right plan. And within this, you can you can present the strongest version of everything you have accomplished. You're not going to be missing things. You're not going to be including things you shouldn't include. It's understanding what you've done, presenting it properly, writing it for the correct audience. So you put yourself to the admissions committee in the best light possible. So when you make a decision, you know that you gave it everything you've had, and you're going to set yourself up for success by doing this. Yeah. Okay, I really like putting this video together for you guys on the UC application. Once again, I'm Zeus Education. I have my contact info after this video. But at Zeus Education, we help students build applications that really highlight their best self and, you know, I say maximize their admissions outcomes, but through the right process, I always find students are amazed with where they can get into. And you know, it's important that if you're going to take the time to apply to all these schools, to do it right with someone who's been through this process themselves and with so many students, because the right help and support makes a massive difference. And I've seen it for countless students over the years. And this last slide, I think, I list our contact information. We have our website, zeuseducation.org. You can call or text here, and there's an email you can contact us at also. I'm always happy to answer any questions. We work with students as early on as like freshman year, even before, to students who are already seniors who are trying to make last minute things. We help with college lists, personal statements, supplemental essays, resume reviews, getting the right letters of recommendation. And all the services we offer obviously differ depending where you are in the process. If you're a senior applying late, you're going to need different help than someone who's with us, from their freshman year, where they're going to need less help, but it's going to be over a lot longer period of time. So you have a lot more chance likely to get into some of the details that someone who's starting with us senior year wouldn't. But we have a lot of options that fit everyone's needs. We've had a lot of success with this, and we really like helping students and pushing them to ensuring that you're already working hard in school, you're taking the right classes. It's so important to put the application together right to give yourself the best chance of success. Because if you're not going to give yourself the best chance of success and really follow a proven process, someone else will. And then they're going to be getting to their dream school and other students won't. So just have a process, follow it, work with someone who's done it, who's helped a lot of students succeed. And by doing this, you're going to be following a path that a lot of students have already, had the success you're looking for with also. Okay, I'll leave you guys on that note. I appreciate you watching. Feel free to message me if you guys have been doing with more videos you want me to post about, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Um, yeah, always message me if you want to set up a consultation. Also, always happy to do that for you guys, or if there's anything you want to talk about. All right, thanks, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your night. And yeah, you can also follow Zeus Educate. Lastly, you can also follow Zeus Education on TikTok and Instagram. We're Zeus Education One, and I post a lot there also. And yeah, thanks, guys. Like I said, you have a good rest of your night, and talk soon. Bye.